Let's go to New South Wales now, because the Premier Chris Minns there could be under a bit of pressure at the moment to adopt tougher gambling laws. This is after Victoria, the latest state to announce sweeping new changes. The Andrews government forging ahead with a series of reforms which include slowing the spin rate per game, mandatory shutdown of gaming areas inside venues for 6 hours a day. Players will also be able to load $100 at a time into the poker machine. That's down from $1,000. Joining me live now is New South Wales opposition leader Mark Speman. Mark Speman, good to see you. Do you think Chris Minns is under a little bit more pressure now that Daniel Andrews is gone?
Well, Chris Minns needs to act. He needed to act several months ago when he was elected. He needs even more than ever to act now. We know there's a huge problem with gambling in New South Wales, with money laundering. The Crime Commission here made a report last year that recommended we move to cashless gaming. We see now that Victoria is moving to cashless gaming. That puts more pressure on New South Wales, because if money laundering is stamped out in Victoria through cashless gaming, there's the increased risk that criminals will move across the border into New South Wales and use pokies here to launder their money. So it is critical that the Premier act swiftly. He's got a trial that he's announced that's kicking it down the road for 18 months. We need a commitment now to cashless gaming.
But he won an election on it. That's a problem. He made a commitment to the people of New South Wales that there would be a review. Perhaps, you know, he's got to weigh that up as well, wouldn't you say?
Well, he promised a review that would commence on 1 July. It hasn't started. It hasn't been designed yet. It has been announced, and we're concerned that it'll be kicked down the road even further. Most people in New South Wales voted for parties or independent candidates that supported cashless gaming. That's the majority view here in New South Wales. It's an enormous problem. It causes misery for untold thousands of gamblers and their families. And it's a big problem for money laundering. We've got a clear recommendation from the Crime Commission here in New South Wales to move to cashless gaming. All the trial does is kick it down the road. It can't really test whether cashless gaming will stamp out these problems, because if you've only got a trial with a limited number of poker machines, then gamblers and money launderers just move elsewhere. They move, downtown somewhere else where they can launder their cash or spend their money on pokies. So that's why a trial is just kicking it down the road. We've got a clear recommendation from the Crime Commission that the Premier should act on. And what has changed since the election is that we now see Victoria moving from as early as the end of 2023 with Crown Casino, a commitment to cashless gaming. That means New South Wales needs to move as well. Otherwise, we're going to have Victoria's problems exported over the border.
I mean, if you look at where poker machines are most prevalent and the revenue they gain, they are in the poorer areas. It looks to me like the problems are in Labor seats. Di Lee has spoken to me about that many times on this program. I can't really understand why Chris Minns wouldn't move on this. What do you think? Have you got your?
It is. Well, in terms of morality and public policy, it is unfathomable. We've got the worst problems in the lowest socioeconomic areas. So it's poorer areas that are hardest hit by problem gambling. You would think a Labor government that proclaimed itself as champions of the workers, champions of poorer people, will be acting swiftly on this. You can only reach the conclusion that the Premier and his team are scared of the gambling industry. They're beholden to the gambling industry, and they're trying to kick it down the road.
All right, let's talk The Voice now, because we've had you on this program a number of times that you said that you were waiting to formulate your position. Then you told us that you were waiting to see the Senate report. You wanted to read it all. So, Mark Speman, do you have a position?
I'd be disappointed if you hadn't asked me, Laura, but my position will be announced very shortly. I have read the report. I've consulted a number of yes and no campaigners, and I expect to be able to announce the position shortly.
OK, what does shortly mean? At least give us a time frame.
Ideally this month.
This month? OK. What are you waiting for, if I can ask?
Well, it's not. It's a very important issue. It is a critical change to the Constitution, and I want to make sure that when I announce my position, that it's fully informed. There are pros and cons that everyone's been debating. I won't be telling people how to vote wherever I land. I'll be telling people how I will vote, but ultimately it'll be up to them to make up their own minds.
Right. But you pretty much made up your mind, but you're just waiting to announce it. Is that right?
No. I've got some thoughts I've been developing, and I'm getting those together, and I expect to be able to announce something shortly.
Okay, so in the next month, you heard it here first, and we expect you to come back on the program when you finally do announce that position. You can even announce it here. So, look, just the invitation is there.
Oh, it's very kind of you, Laura. Thank you.
Look,
very kind.
At the election, I wanted to raise this with you. At the election, the New South Wales election, that is, it was such a... the tenor of politics seemed to have changed. There was praise from both Dominic Perrottet and Chris Minns directed at each other, and it was so welcomed by the public and I think the press as well. While you were away, we had the Premier being attacked from one of your shadow ministers for being on leave, and you were in Bali at the time. What's going on there?
Oh, look, I think the critical thing is that here in New South Wales, we've got a government at the moment that doesn't appear to be able to control its expenses. Chris Minns promised at the election that wage increases for public sector workers would be funded, fully funded by productivity increases. What instead we learn now is that even if it's the earlier offer by the government is accepted, that's going to cost the taxpayer $2.5 billion over 4 years. So Matt Keane was calling that out, and the need for the Premier to focus on solving that problem and delivering to the people of New South Wales what he promised, which were wage increases that wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. Okay,
but the leave issue, I mean, you've kind of dodged that. What is your role in kind of elevating the political discourse, and was that all kind of an outlier, or is that part of your strategy?
No, look, I as opposition leader want to have a civilised political discourse, but we won't pull punches. Where there is a need to call the government out on breaking election promises, we'll do so. Where we can offer constructive comments, collaborative comments, we'll do so. Like, for example, last week we welcomed changes that the government have made to eligibility for domestic violence, temporary accommodation and other crisis accommodation. Where the government does good things, we'll congratulate them and support them. Okay. But where they break election promises, we'll call them out.
All right, fair enough. But just to be clear, you've got no problem with the Premier going on leave?
Of course not. Look, all politicians have to go on leave at some stage, and if you take a bit of leave, you actually come back refreshed and recharged. I took a week's leave, and I'm now back refreshed, recharged, reinvigorated, and able to take on the government. Call them out where they make mistakes and congratulate them and collaborate where they do the right thing. And fresh for AM Agenda, of course, and we'll be speaking to you in the next month, Mark Speakman, if not before. Thanks for your time as always.